What's going on, everybody? This is John Jake Gaming on the mic here, coming at you with a brand new episode of the NCSL Dynasty here on College Football Revamp within NCAA 14. We are closing in on the halfway point of the season already, so we have a lot planned for you in this particular episode. Not only will we end up seeing some quality football action around the country, as we'll see at least 16 games throughout the channel here today, but because we are closing in on that halfway point, many teams have played 6 games or even more, depending on how bye weeks have turned out. We're going to go ahead and take our conference standings update as well, see where each team stands in the conference and national championship race. So it's going to be a fun episode in this one. I hope you guys enjoy it. If you do, make sure you go ahead, smack that like button for me, and then also hit that subscribe button as well if you do happen to be brand new to the channel. And without further ado, let's go ahead and not waste any more time. I'll see you guys on the football fields around the country. So we go ahead and get week number 7 action officially underway, and we are starting with the Auburn Tigers going on the road and take on the Rebels of Ole Miss. And Ole Miss, they got out to a big lead to start things out, a 20-3 lead to be exact, but don't doubt the fight that Derek Alexander has in his bag. Alexander's going to try to get the first touchdown of the game for the Auburn Tigers, as he's going to keep it himself. He's got some path to work his way into the end zone, and it's a touchdown for the Auburn Tigers. Auburn does cut it down to a 2-possession game, but that's not all. Ole Miss can't do anything on the next possession, and all of a sudden, Auburn has a chance to get right back into this game. We'll see if they can accomplish exactly that. 3rd and short now for the Auburn Tigers. They're going to run it up the middle. He's got a path to get into the end zone, and Will Walden takes it. Auburn down to just a field goal. And dare I say it, they might mess around and tie things up here, or even better, try to take the lead, as Roy Gross does fight his way for the first down. As now, 2nd and 10, couple plays later, another carry up the middle for Roy Gross. Man, did he have to get some tough yards in this game, but he is at well over 100 yards now. His Auburn's just a few yards away from taking the lead. Gonna hand it off to Will Walton, who gets his 2nd rushing touchdown of the game. What a comeback for Auburn. And now the Rebels have to drive down the field with less than 2 minutes left in the game if they want to come out and emerge as the winners. We'll see if they can execute that, as they will go right into their no huddle. They do have 3 timeouts that they have to work with as well, as Archie's going to drop back the pass. He has a clean pocket, fires to the right hand side. He's by himself, and he's going to score. Stephen Castillo with a 57-yard touchdown pass, and the Ole Miss Rebels retake the lead. But Auburn will drive down the field, and they will get this 40-yard field goal to hit. So that means we will have overtime. So we'll see what happens in the overtime period. First overtime, Ole Miss drops back the pass of Eric Archie. He's going to find Stephen Castillo. The main reason why we still have a game to begin with. Otherwise, this would have been an Auburn victory. So here we go. 2nd and inches coming up now. Archie looks over the middle, finds a receiver, and it's a touchdown for Ole Miss. They're going to pull ahead, and now Auburn needs to answer the call. This 4th and 7 becomes very vital all of a sudden. A chance to tie the game, and it's going to be 1 yard short. So Ole Miss is going to survive, but just barely. Ole Miss wins the first game of this episode. But now we got our first double box special, as we have not only Penn State, but a surprisingly good Miami of Ohio team playing in this episode as well. But first, we will check in on that ranked Penn State squad. They're going to take on a Rutgers team that could have a case to be ranked as well. They are 4-1 at this point in the season, and show why they deserve to be ranked, as they take a 7-0 lead early on in the ball game. But then Penn State's quarterback, Brian Henry, well, he's just follow his blockers. He's a very mobile quarterback. Well, he'll find a way into the end zone too. It's going to be a tick for tack game, as Both teams not giving it too much ground to each other. And you can already tell it's going to be a hard-nosed game. Jason Smith taking those hard hits right on the mouth and giving them right back. But a penalty is going to bring Penn State back. So going to be a long goal line opportunity, which Penn State will still get. The Nittany Lions will find the end zone. And it's a touchdown for Penn State. This back and forth affair happens all the way into the fourth quarter. We get into the last 3 minutes of the game. Penn State could find themselves on the wrong end of an upset. This Rutgers offense has the game completely in their hands now. As Rutgers drops back the pass, looks over to the left-hand side, gets it out to almost midfield. They're pacing themselves very well as Joe Long gets over 100 yards on the day. However, very next throw, trying to throw over the middle, but it's going to be intercepted. And that's what killed Rutgers today, was the turnovers. Rutgers kept it close in spite of the turnovers, while Penn State, they played a clean game and yet almost found themselves on the losing end. But here we are now, a chance for the Nittany Lions to ice the game as they'll run it on 3rd and 4. And they almost find the end zone with Blaine Ingram. That's a 16-yard carry right up the gut. But I think they got some devious things that they want to do. They have no intentions on kneeling. Brian Henry, he's going to run it in himself. And Penn State, maybe a case of trying to add some style points here. Style points is the only place where in college football that type of stuff matters. Don't really see that in any other sport, but Penn State will also get the 2-point conversion, and the Nittany Lions closer than what the score says, but Penn State wins by 2 scores in this one. Meanwhile, the Miami Redhawks, not the Miami Hurricanes. Remember, they're not the only good Miami team this season, as the Redhawks will take on the Cincinnati Bearcats in the Battle of the Victory Bell. Miami won this rivalry game last year in a defensive showdown. We'll see if Miami can do the same thing and get themselves to 5-1 and on a verge of a bowl game as well. And it looks like Miami in a great spot early on in Oxford, Ohio. Already up 13-0. Throws over the middle, finds his tight end. Tight end's going to fight and shove almost to the first down. Almost picked up that first down by himself. 3rd and short should be an easy pickup for the Redhawks, unless they're trying to do something cute, which they don't necessarily do that. They just go with the slant patterns, get it to Matt Steffens out quickly, as his first catch of the day provides a goal line opportunity for the Redhawks. Very next play, another drop back. This time a roll out to the right, facing some pressure though, but still finds Matt Steffens yet again for the touchdown. And then final moments of the first half, Miami, well, they're just going to score again. Another touchdown for Miami as they open up the can on the Cincinnati Bearcats. Miami would go on to win 30-7 as they're off to a 5-1 start here on the year. So we get our first studio update of the episode, and how about this for Louisiana Tech? The Bulldogs continue to roll through season number 2, as this time they win 24-21 against Mississippi State. That being said, we go back to an individual game as USC, the number 1 USC ranked Trojans, they go on the road to take on the San Diego State Aztecs, who struggled through this year, 2-4 thus far on the season. We'll see if San Diego State can pull off a big upset, but USC, we'll see what their focus is like. And it looks like early on USC doing its thing as they will get their first touchdown of the game. They kind of came out the gates a little bit rusty, maybe that pressure of being a number 1 team in the country getting to them a little bit, but 13-0 is now your score as they'll run it up the gut for Nick Richard, and Nick Richard almost picking up that first down. He's a big reason why the USC offense hasn't been humming to its full potential, averaging less than 3 yards a carry, but they have some other weapons on this team, such as John Concepcion. And USC surges to a 23-0 lead going into the final quarter. San Diego State at this point just looking to not have a goose egg on the scoreboard the entire game, as Barmatu Buckley finally gets that goose egg off the board. They'll even go for the 2-point conversion, going with a little bit of wildcat, but I mean, that's just San Diego State's offense in a nutshell today. Couldn't get much going. And while USC only scored 23, that was more than enough to remain undefeated. But a bunch of other games happening around the country, most notably number 3 Georgia, number 21 Alabama, and of course we got a little bit of action here as well with Illinois and Tennessee. So a lot happening here in this 3:30 slate as well. But first we will check in on Georgia. Like I said, number 3 team in the entire country. Well, they're taking on a winless University of Alabama and Birmingham team. And this UAB team has a offensive coordinator who is one of your guys' custom coaches, Alex Sanders. But, I mean, this Georgia team just seems like it is on a mission all season long. They're already up 14-0. And it looks like the Bulldog offense just might be rolling at an extraordinarily high level today, as Georgia really opens it up before we even hit the half. Although UAB does find a way to score a couple of touchdowns before we go into the halftime locker room. But other than that, man, besides that little hiccup towards the end of the second quarter, Georgia, well, they were just rolling all day long today, as midway through the third quarter, already with a 35-14 lead. Adam Williams trying to make that 40-burger happen before we even get to the end of the third quarter, and before a lot of coaches, at least in NCAA 14, do decide to put their backups in the game. As we'll go ahead and see Andre Bryant find his way into the end zone yet again. And sure enough, Georgia puts up the 50-burger as they demolish UAB 56-21. Meanwhile, Wisconsin and Iowa find themselves in a little bit of a surprise shootout. We'll go ahead and cut into the second half, because as much as as high as that score looks, there was a lot of field goals in the first half. And, you know, field goals generally are a little bit on the boring side. So in the third quarter, though, that's when we really start to see some fireworks happening. Wisconsin and Iowa, they just went back and forth like a tennis match, really just matching each other's scores, which you wouldn't really expect that from Iowa, to be honest with you. That's really not in their identity. But here we are, Iowa in a midst of a possible shootout here, and Iowa keeping up. Adam Smith is going to score for the Iowa Hawkeyes, but they will go for the 2-point conversion in order to make this a field goal game. They try to run the option, but played extremely well by the Wisconsin front seven, so 2-point conversion is going to be no good. Meanwhile, we jump into that fourth quarter of action. Wisconsin only down by 1 thanks to stopping that 2-point conversion. And look at all of his time that he has. Able to roll to his right, remains calm, and Dominic James throws his second passing touchdown of the game. Matter of fact, they go right back to him to try to throw a 2-point conversion. But again, Wisconsin fails with the 2-point conversion, so they're only up by 5 net again. Iowa looking to try to take the lead here midway through the fourth quarter. They go to Damian Porter, who been held pretty silent today. Less than 3 yards to carry. This is quarterback for Iowa that's done a lot of the work to get down here, but they'll go to the fullback, Tommy Weddle. A little bit of fullback love here in Iowa as they'll take the lead themselves. But again, they go for the 2-point conversion. Will somebody convert a 2-point conversion over the middle? And they don't count it. I thought Robinson might have found his way into the end zone there for that 2-point conversion, but they don't give it to him. So now, less than 3 minutes left. Wisconsin does score yet again. So Iowa, they need another touchdown. Can the Wisconsin defense actually come through and get a legitimate stop or not? 37-32, third and goal, looking, has some time, evades the pressure and finds a man in the back of the end zone. It's Austin Steele, and it gives the Iowa Hawkeyes the lead. 38-37, your score, and they'll also get the 2-point conversion as well. How much gas is in the tank for the Wisconsin offense? They only need to get down the field goal range, so a couple first downs should do it, but Dominic James wants it all, but he's gonna lose it all instead. Just a safety, tracked it down, and got his feet in bounds as well. So Iowa wins in a shootout, 40-37 being her final score, but an exciting game to watch. So hopefully some of these other games can live up to what we just saw as we now cut into Sun Belt Conference action as we check in on South Alabama, a former top 25 team, but they have not lived up to what they were supposed to be this season. Well, they are going to be taking on number 21 ranked Alabama, and the Alabama Crimson Tide looking to remain in the top 25. But first drive of the game for South Alabama, it's a nice steady drive for the Jaguars as they're looking for the first points here in Bryant-Denny Stadium. They'll run the speed option over to right inside, and Chris Nance just willing his way into the end zone there. And that's exactly what happened. South Alabama not only jumping out to a 7-0 lead, but they could make this a 2-score lead if they take care of the football down here in the red zone. This is the kind of start that you're looking for as a road team to try to get that home crowd here at Bryant-Denny Stadium, trying to get them out of it, as this should have been a loss, but somehow Chris Nance turns it into a touchdown. Are you kidding me right now? Gives South Alabama a 14-0 lead. But the Alabama offense, well, their offensive line finally starts to go to work. Quinn Wake does help them pull to within 7 points before we get into that second quarter. But we got to see some Curtis West action here. Curtis West has one of the highest overalls in this dynasty right now. He's close, or at least as close to a 99 overall as we're going to get, but surprisingly they don't really utilize him like that in the Alabama offense. But that being said though, South Alabama, they will take the lead with less than 3 minutes left as one of the receivers, CJ Boyd, gets involved in that triple option, that motion wide receiver option concept. I personally love that concept when playing NCAA 14, so no surprise that it works so well here in the CPU versus CPU format. But Alabama finds themselves down by 4, and it's time for Curtis West to go to work, allegedly, but their fullback's going to get a carry instead. Did not see that one coming. Antonio Buchanan with an 11-yard run, and they might go back to him, but instead they go to a receiver who's got some speed to burn as well. They do count that as a forward pass for Curtis West, so it gets him up to 7 for 11 for 126 yards. We're going to build on that as he throws yet again, this time to Mike Brooks for the first down. Alabama does decide to take one of their timeouts as they look to pull ahead before we go into halftime. Pitches it out to the right-hand side, and Curtis West gets it out to Quinn Wake, and the Crimson Tide will take the lead once more. And it remains a close game until we get into that fourth quarter. And at that point in the fourth quarter, we really start to see the talent on the depth chart really start to show here. 36-24 being your score after the Curtis West touchdown. And how about West just doing his best to avoid the pressure on this 2-point conversion, but throws the ball right into coverage. Does end up being an interception. Won't technically count on the stats, but I mean, Curtis West did throw it to a South Alabama defender. But yeah, beyond that, Alabama really dominates this fourth quarter. It's going to look like a blowout on paper, but that really wasn't the case. Alabama scored 20 in that fourth quarter to really pull away from South Alabama. The Jaguars have nothing to be ashamed of. But now we have LSU taking on the Florida Gators in Florida. After a disappointing year number 1, they're looking to get back on track, maybe get ranked in the top 25 for the very first time. But first and foremost, congratulations to Chad Malloy. He extends his career record for most sacks in a career. He's now at 28 career sacks, which leads all LSU defensive players. So congratulations to him. But in terms of what happened in the first half, that was really the only positive, because LSU quickly finds itself down 21-0 before LSU finally gets into the end zone. But LSU trying to claw back into this game. They do manage to get to a point where it's just a 4-point game going into that final quarter of action. But Florida's trying to put together yet another drive, and they're trying to make sure that they can put this game away, right? So big drive here for both teams, as this could determine how the rest of the game goes, as Mike Hairston gets him a little bit closer to that goal line. He's nearly at 100 yards receiving. We'll see what they do with the third and goal. They decide to pass again. He's got a clean pocket, looks to the right inside, and it's a toe touch grab for Keith Sanders. That might be enough for Florida to put it away. And after LSU fails to score in their next drive, that actually could be the case. We might be seeing Florida really opening it up on LSU, as LSU, arguably the most disappointing team here in year number 2. Remember when this team was a top 10 team to start the season? Well, Pepperidge Farm certainly remembers that. And now LSU down 38-20. They're not going to give up without a fight. They will throw it to their tailback, Darren Weatherford, which I actually have no idea how he makes that catch, to be honest with you guys. That was actually a very difficult catch to make, but you know, it is what it is. But LSU will actually go into their no huddle offense. I like the fight that's this LSU team. It shows that they are not going to give up on their head coach, even though this is not the season that LSU wanted, with Brian Kelly retiring. But man, you could tell that LSU just not as sharp as what we saw last season. A team that we thought for most of the year could make it into the college football playoff. I thought the Tigers will end up scoring. They will get a touchdown with 26 seconds left to play. They'll even go so far as to go for this 2-point conversion as well, which almost was caught successfully. But it takes us right into a studio update. And how about UNLV continuing to impress right now? UNLV has a 34-21 victory. They're now just one win away from going bowling for the second time in this series. But Florida, they will hang on to win. They'll beat LSU 38-26, and they're now at 5-2, one win away from bowling. Speaking of those old SEC teams, we now go to the MAC to check in on Tennessee. Tennessee recently losing their last game that we saw them play. That was a nationally televised game. They're going to take on an Illinois season who maybe don't has a much to play from a national standpoint, but I mean, they still have a lot to play for in terms of conference aspirations. And who knows, maybe they can play a little bit spoiler for Tennessee as well, as they try to prevent the Tennessee Volunteers from getting ranked into the top 25. They were a team that was ranked early in season number 1, but hasn't been the same since then. However, Tennessee's going to drop back the pass, going to try to throw it out to the left-hand side. Got his receiver, Andrew Adams, and he does make it a much more manageable third down conversion. Only need a couple of yards there, as they're actually going to pass it here. They did not see this one coming, and James Brown is able to slip out and get Tim Randrum his first touchdown pass of the ball game. Just like that, Tennessee right back in it, and late in the third quarter, a chance to take the lead as well, as Tim Randrum fires over the left-hand side. Just a curl pattern, but Adams was by himself. Nobody was covering him. The dude, well, he was just wide butt naked open there. So Illinois finds themselves down now 24-20 going into this final quarter of action. But their quarterback, he is a certified dog, as Alex Fine. Well, I'm sure he's going to be just fine with a touchdown next to his name, as Illinois retakes the lead, putting the pressure back on the Tennessee Volunteers. Less than 2 minutes left, firing over to the right-hand side, and Tennessee answers! Jason Page with a score, and Tim Landrum might have given Tennessee their 5th win of the season. All the defense gotta do is get one more stop. Less than 2 minutes left, but the Fighting Illini got free timeouts, and right away, already at the 35-yard line, Illinois not planning on using any of their timeouts, but they're spending a lot of time to get to the line up next. Fine, looking over to the left-hand side, that's somehow caught! That's caught! He's got a convoy, and John Love is going to score. I thought the coverage was solid there, but unfortunately, that still leads to a touchdown the other way. Illinois is going to stun Tennessee on the road. So we get another studio update as we continue through this week number 7 action. Arizona State also getting the 5-1 after a 38-17 victory over Utah State. And in other studio update news, we got Arizona with the Wildcats able to get the 5-1 as well. 30-17 being your final score against a Boise State team that went to the Mountain West Conference Championship last year, was the runners-up. I don't think that's going to be the case this year. But now we check in on Arkansas going on the road and taking on the Gamecocks of South Carolina. And this South Carolina team, man, they just fallen from earth a little bit. Right? I remember when they started off 2-0, they were having some decent things, wins over Duke and Virginia, but 4-game losing streak, I should say. And if you're trying to break a losing streak, that I'm pretty sure is not how you want to go about doing it. Arkansas is going to score with Trey Smith. Special team score, of all things. We don't get to see that in person very often. And so Arkansas with a 10-0 lead, but their offense going to work here once more as Logan McGee gets them inside the 5-yard line. A chance for Arkansas to really dominate the South Carolina team and take this crowd out of the game. You always love to do that as a road squad. So now, next play, 1st and goal, and Motley does just that. Then the crowd goes silent. So silent, matter of fact, you could hear a squirrel fart in this stadium, and that was the case for a lot of this game as Arkansas keeps South Carolina a couple of arm lengths. And South Carolina, well, 3 minutes left to go in the game. They finally will get their first offensive touchdown in this one. Doug Everett will make sure that he'll punch it in for his South Carolina squad, but they'll even go for a 2-point conversion too. If we're going to try and make this a 2-score game, we'll see if Davis can convert here, but quickly facing the pressure. And that's South Carolina's day in a nutshell. They lose their 5th consecutive game as Arkansas wins on the road 27-9. That being said, we get to the later games of this episode. We got Colorado State and Air Force for the Falcon Ram Trophy, but we'll also see number 2 Ohio State in action later on. And Colorado State, a team that has really surprised a lot of people, including myself. Colorado State, that was a team that had arguably one of the worst defenses in the country, but whatever they're doing up there in Colorado Springs, it's working. Because with a win here, Colorado State will indeed be bowl eligible. So we'll see if they can accomplish exactly that. They already have a 14-0 lead against their hated rival as Eric McBride drops back the pass for a second, but he's going to run it himself. But McBride puts it on the ground, and Air Force is going to recover. The Air Force Falcons, well, they needed a little bit of life, and they are going to get it. Unfortunately, they can't turn it into anything. And before we get out of that halftime locker room, Colorado State makes that deficit pretty steep. They'll take a 24-0 lead into halftime. However, in the 4th quarter, Air Force is going to try to do something that we really haven't seen Air Force do. They are down by 3 scores here in the 4th quarter. So Air Force is going to have to essentially be perfect. If they want a chance to tie, let alone try to come out and win this thing, like, to win this thing is what we're talking about. They'll even, they tried to go for the extra point. Extra point is no good. So if they're down by 15, they will need to utilize the extra point if they want to tie this game after all. So that just makes it a little bit harder for Air Force. But the Falcons are chipping away at this lead, and with 2 minutes left, Terry Lacey could make it a 1-score game depending on what happens with this 2-point conversion. Here we are, 2:01. They go for the 2-point conversion, and it's successful. Deion Kirby's offense gets it to within 7 points. And speaking of points coming out of premium, how about this game? Akron absolutely shocking Michigan right now. That is insane. So we'll see if Air Force can do the same thing, pull off a little bit of a shocker, as Colorado State could be a team that we could see sneak into the top 25 depending on what happens in the remainder of this game. But Ben Kelly, he's going to set the career passing record for most passing yards in a career. And now, 1 minute left, a chance for Ben Kelly to send us into overtime. He's going to scramble out of the pocket. He gets across the 40-yard line. It's a 1st down, so we're going to go ahead and continue to go into that no-huddle offense. We don't have a lot of options left. Desire touchdown for Burst for Deion Kirby. And Kelly gets a ton of time. Throws over the middle of the field. Got a receiver. And Tyson McTimish, McIntosh gets the Falcons in the red zone. But time is a premium though. Dropping back. Looks over the middle of the field and finds McIntosh again. And we're going to overtime. But however, for Air Force misses the field goal in the first overtime period. So Colorado State, if they score at all, this game is going to be over. But hey, give Air Force credit for even making this a game to begin with. I thought Colorado State was going to run away with it. That did not happen, but Colorado State is going to punch it in the overtime period. And listen, it was a little bit more dramatic than what I anticipated being, but the Rams will be bowl eligible with this one. Meanwhile, Ohio State is also looking for the same thing, while Ball State is just trying to get their first win. They have really been down bad. Not down bad, but down horrendous in this game, right? It has been a struggle bus for this Ohio State squad. But that being said, Ball State, early on, they actually got a lead right now. They are actually leading this Ohio State team. And they could, and they extend this lead a little bit too. It's 12-7. Ohio State does have their backup quarterback in the game. This is Vincent Bold. Usually we are used to Brooke Hicks, but Brooke Hicks does get hurt in this game. So we'll see what Vincent Gold can do, and he steps in pretty seamlessly. He's going to throw a touchdown pass to Jermaine Graham with about 90 seconds left in the first half. And the first full drive for this backup quarterback goes pretty well, but problem is, Ball State, they are actually going to get their own 2-minute drive going. Couple of missed tackles, and he's off for the races. And wow, Ball State already in the red zone too. This game is becoming a lot more interesting than I thought it was going to be. I thought we were going to see an Ohio State blowout through and through, but instead it's Ball State with the lead with less than a minute left in the first half. Oh boy, this would be a monumental upset if this can somehow hold, but I gotta give Vincent Gold some credit. He is remaining extremely composed coming into the middle of this game. This could get very, like I said, could get really interesting. But Gold is going to fire to the left-hand side, and he's going to find his man. Touchdown, Ohio State, Keith Carter. Hey, Mr. Carter, how have you been? And the Ohio State Buckeyes back on top, 21-19, but with 18 seconds left. Ball State with one timeout. Got a man himself. Oh, no. Ball State is going to take the lead again. This time it's Dominic Bailey. And nobody told Ball State this, but they shouldn't have been in this game at any point. But here we are, late in the third quarter. It's still a contest. It is actually still a contest right now. I cannot believe my eyes. Are they deceiving me right now? I cannot believe what I'm seeing. But Ohio State on a 3rd and 4. They're going to run it with Brian Britt. And Brian Britt will find the end zone. Touchdown for Ohio State. Plus that extra point as well. And unfortunately in that fourth quarter, it just seems like Ball State just runs out of gas. They straight up just run out of gas here towards the end. Ohio State really opens it up in the fourth quarter. Could be seeing them give up a 50 burger as Vincent Gold continuing to turn his legs. Yeah, this Ball State team, they're just tired. They are just wiped out. And it really shows on the scoreboard. Ohio State will indeed get that 50 burger. And Ohio State does win comfortably 53-26. But Ball State, at least for that first half, well, they gave one heck of a fight. But now we got a quadruple box to wrap up the gameplay in this episode. Quite a few rivalry games, a top 25 matchup, and the college game day matchup. So you'll love to see all that. First and foremost, we will have the border war between the Kansas Jayhawks and the Missouri Tigers. But Missouri is up 13-0 early in the border war. Missouri, a team that just implemented the triple option. I don't picture Missouri as a team that does triple option very often, but you know, they did implement triple option in the offseason, as Kevin Jefferson will make it to just a 6-point game, but points really did come at a premium in this one, as the Kansas Jayhawks, well, they struggle to find offense. Missouri really struggled to find offense as well. It's just been that type of day, but Kansas can pull to within just a couple of points here, as they actually do. John Greenwood does find the end zone for the Kansas Jayhawks as they pull to within just a field goal as well. but Missouri will pull away in that fourth quarter as it's the Tigers who do end up winning the Border Wars Special. Now, this could also be considered a rivalry game to some degree, as SMU and Houston, well, they don't like each other dating back to their days in the Conference USA. Now they're here in the Big 12 in this geographical realignment landscape. Houston is 3-1, so they're off to a good start here this year. SMU, I thought, was going to do a little bit better after they pulled the upset convincingly against Navy, but only 1-4 since then. So SMU has been one of those teams that, at least at this point of the year, they play good enough to be competitive, not get blown off the field, but they're having a hard time winning those one-possession games. They're having a hard time finishing. But man, SMU, they certainly got some dudes as well. Kevin Walker specifically is one of those dudes as well. And SMU keeps it to within 4 as Houston tries to get some points on the board before we go into halftime. And hey, maybe they will, because they're already at midfield courtesy of Sonny Evans. It's now a couple of plays later, 2nd and 3 coming up. Looking over the middle of the field, it's got a receiver who breaks a tackle, and Ryan White gets a gain of 10 yards, as that will be his second catch of the day. One more first down will get him around the red zone area, and this might get him into at least field goal range thanks to that Dante Sims catch. But I'm sure that they're thinking about a little bit more than just a field goal. I think they want to get a touchdown on the board, and this might be the one that gets him in there, and it does. Goody Paul finds the end zone. Touchdown for the Houston Cougars as we now sit with a 24-13 lead. SMU needs a response early in the third quarter. They might get it, setting up the halfback screen extraordinarily well. Beautiful job by O'Neal, following his blocks in, and it cuts it to just a 4-point game. But it looks like Houston's offense might be a little bit too much, and I'm surprised to see Houston do this, because in the preview, in that quad box, like if you really zoom in there, they only been averaging 16 points a game. This has not been a very prolific Houston team. Matter of fact, this Houston team has won with its defense, so I expected this to be a little bit more of that defensive kind of game, maybe seeing like 20, 30 points scored total among these two squads, like that type of thing. And I mean, I was wrong. I was straight up wrong about that. Houston might be on the verge of a 40-burger, depending on what they do on this play. Goal line situation, and John Smith scores. He scores for the Houston Cougars. It's 38-20 now. Gonna be your score. SMU trying to get back into this game. They're gonna ride their quarterback, who takes the keeper on the read option. Derek Ford will pick up a gain of 6 yards there, as we now have a 2nd and 4 coming up, trying to run up the gut with their tailback, Gary O'Neal, who's been the main offensive cog for the SMU Mustangs, but hasn't gotten done on the ground, less than 50 yards rushing. I'm actually surprised that SMU hasn't completely been blown out because of that, but that being said, they're going to go for a 2-point conversion, try to get it to where they'll just need a touchdown, a field goal. Don't have to worry about getting 2 touchdowns straight up and down. But Houston pulls away even more, 41-28. So, matter of fact, they will need those an onside kick after all, unless they decide to kick them off, which surprisingly they do if they kick it off to Houston. And Houston kept the ball for the rest of the game. So the Houston Cougars, they do win that shootout, 41-35. That being said, we go into our thumbnail game that you saw in the thumbnail. This is where College Game Day went. Miami, Florida, where the number 4 ranked Miami Hurricanes are. And this game was a battle, and this game was sloppy the entire time. Neither team really taking control of this game. If you're looking for some offense, well, you might want to turn away. You might want to avert the eyes a little bit, because this game might not be for you. Only 10-3 your score going into the final moments of the second quarter, but we might have a little something here as Mark Edwards does get Miami in the red zone, but they got to finish the job in the red zone. Carter trying to scramble once again, but puts the ball on the ground, and somehow Florida State recovers it. I don't know how they pull it off, but Florida State does recover the football there. it was that type of game. But Miami does hang on. They do win this game by a narrow margin. Miami does end up winning 17-3. But that being said, this was actually the only top 25 matchup that we do get to see in the entirety of week number 7, and this was going to be a regionally televised game. Now, typically, I think we just stay with the nationally televised games that NCAA 14 recommends, but, I mean, when it's a top 25 matchup, I gotta show you guys, right? Like, I just have to do it, as James Madison in the top 25 for the very first time. They are 4-0 coming up against a 4-1 Syracuse team, so should be a fun game between these two teams. But early on, points were a little bit difficult to try to come across, as Syracuse does get that interception in the end zone. We'll see if Jacob Butler can do anything with it on the other end, as we have a guy who's one butt naked open down the sideline. And Mike Weddle was finally brought down, but not before a gain of 43 yards. It was man-to-man coverage, and Weddle just beats the press off the line of scrimmage. Bold strategy for Cotton, especially when you're setting a blitz. And it will end up turning into the very first points of the game, as Jacob Butler will carry the ball into the end zone. And sure enough, Jacob Butler will make it a 7-0 game after 1 quarter of action. Meanwhile, midway through the second quarter, still a tight ball game, 7-0. As, wait a minute now, they're going to run a flea flicker? Wow, I have not seen a flea flicker before in a game like that in the NCAA 14, but they did it. And not only did they actually do it, they actually pulled it off. I'm actually impressed. Touchdown goes to the transfer from Texas State in Caleb Hollins. So a 7-all game now, as Syracuse will look to answer back. His momentum certainly has to be on James Madison's side after a play like that. But hey, give the Syracuse team some credit, as Jacob Butler keeps his guys composed, and they will be able to march right down the field. They're going to get another touchdown in this one, as Jacob Butler does a great job following the blockers, and hey, he makes a man or two miss too on the way to the end zone. However, final moments of the first half, though, James Madison with a chance to tie. Looking around, is going to try to run with the ball, and that ball it's on the ground, but James Madison is going to recover it. Man, did they dodge a bullet there. That could have been a disaster. Might still be considered a disaster in my opinion, as James Madison again trying to throw, but puts the ball on the ground again. Man, James Madison could have pulled within 4, but I mean, turnovers, man. Turnovers have been a problem for this James Madison team in this game. So James Madison will still be down by 7, and that starting quarterback, well, he ends up getting hurt. So we will have a different quarterback in the game. This is Haven Cardisan. This is actually one of your guys' custom players. And look what he does, just throws a dot that makes it into the end zone. James Madison thought they were going to tie it up, but they actually missed the extra point there. So James Madison still trailing, and they might be trailing even more if they're not careful, as Kyle Jackson takes the top off the James Madison defense yet again. And that's going to be one of the easier 40-yard gains that Syracuse is probably going to get in this ball game, as again, points have been a little bit of a premium in this one. So now 2nd and 5 coming up. Butler dropping back, fires over the middle, and finds DJ Johnson in the end zone. Touchdown for the Syracuse Orange. And it looks like Syracuse might be making a statement here in Conference USA play. A chance to close this game out, but they decided to pass. Like, you had this game on ice, and they trying to go deep. They were really looking for those style points. And not only are they not going to get those style points, they're going to keep James Madison alive. Not much of a heartbeat. They're going to have to score quickly, and they're going to also have to come out here and make sure that this Syracuse squad doesn't get the ball again. But you're right, James Madison does have a chance, as the custom Havon Cardisan, he's trying to throw over the middle of the field, but he does throw it into traffic, unfortunately. And listen, I don't know what the fat lady is singing, but she's certainly going to get those vocal cords nice and warmed up now, as Havon Cardisan, he does an admirable job going in relief, but it just wasn't enough. Syracuse is going to win while James Madison, well, they are going to lose their very first game of the season. But before we check out the rest of the game zone, we will have a quick studio update. Minnesota back in the top 25 after their win against Nebraska. They should move up a little bit thanks to this win against the Northwestern Wildcats. But with the college game day matchup as well as the other nationally televised games officially being completed, let's now go around the country and check out some other scores that happened. How about Hawaii and the turnaround that they've had first and foremost, led by offensive coordinator George Gentry, who is one of your guys' coordinators, by the way. Hawaii wins 59-3 against Stanford, as Hawaii is now just one win away from being bowl eligible. As for the midshipmen of Navy, who actually is ranked in the top 25, however, they took on the Bulls of Buffalo in Conference USA action. Navy wins 31-20 as they now have a solid 4-2 record after a bumpy start to the year. Speaking of our military academies, the Army Black Knights took on the Temple Owls, and Army took them to the woodshed as Army blows out Temple 48-17. Army also one of those teams that is barely ranked inside the top 25, and they solidified their position here. However, the Nebraska Cornhuskers, they were in a fight for their life as Nebraska, they went to town against Eastern Michigan, but the Cornhuskers survive, winning on a field goal that happened in the overtime period, and the EMU Eagles couldn't respond. Texas, however, did not have that same issue as they took on a solid San Jose State squad. However, the Texas Longhorns were too much as they win 42-25. Texas is still undefeated on the year, getting to 5-0 on the season. As for the California Bears, they move off of their win against UCLA and had a battle against Louisville. Louisville did make this competitive in the second half. However, California was in control for the vast majority of this game as the California Bears won 28-23 as they are now inside the top 10 here in the AP Top 25 that was just released. Meanwhile, the Virginia Tech Hokies, they prove that they are a team capable of going to the college football playoff this year. How about this kind of performance here as the Hokies win 38-0, absolutely destroying Eastern Carolina in conference play. So with the completion of the last game that we saw, we are officially halfway through the regular season here in year number 2. So I thought it would be a good time to go ahead and give you guys a conference standings update throughout the NCAA, at least at the higher echelons of Division I football. We'll start with the ACC, and we will begin with the Carolinas division. Right now, a freeway tie for first at the moment as we have Virginia Tech, Clemson, and Wake Forest all tied for first place at the moment. None of those three teams did lose a conference game. Charlotte is certainly still in the picture as well, though, as they are also just one game away from being bowl eligible yet again. Charlotte is building a very strong program within the ACC. As for the Commonwealth Division, it seems pretty cut and dry in terms of what's going on right now. North Carolina has the advantage. They do have a half-game lead, and since their loss to Colorado State in week number 1, they haven't lost a single game since. North Carolina State is on their heels, though. They put together a solid season thus far at 500 and with a 1-1 conference record. Up next, we have the American Conference, and we go over to the Frontier Division. And this became very interesting when Nebraska lost to Minnesota. So Nebraska very careful to not lose another conference game, because it could mean opening up an opportunity for Minnesota, who is just a half game behind. However, a couple other teams that could be considered in the mix are the Missouri Tigers, as well as those Kansas Jayhawks as well. Nebraska, other than that loss to Minnesota, has put together a very good season so far this year. Now, as for the Lake Division, right now it seems like Iowa has a dominant edge, but Iowa has played the majority of their conference games, which That isn't the case for many of the other teams in the conference. Iowa is 4-0, but they are in the top 25. But some other good teams in there, at least some solid teams, such as Western Michigan at 4-1. We do also have Bowling Green, who's sitting at 500. And then Eastern Michigan has been surprisingly competitive, even though they, at least on paper, should have one of the worst defenses in the entire country. But now we go over to the Big 12 conference, which is essentially the Texas conference plus a few Oklahoma teams thrown in there. We go to the Alamo division first, and a 5-way tie for first place. We got Rice, Texas, UTEP in there as well, followed by Houston and Baylor. They all have a say in their conference championship hopes, and who's to say UTSA could do some things as well. This is a very open division. In the second half of the season, we could be looking at a very exciting finish to go to that conference championship. Meanwhile, in the Lone Star division, a little bit of a surprise here. Tulsa is at the very top. This was a bottom dweller in the preseason polls, but they control their own destiny. TCU was a team that was also on a slow start as well, but TCU could come out and really do some special things in the second half, but they'll have some work to do though. North Texas, meanwhile, just lost their first game of the season. They lost to UTEP, who is over in that Alamo division, but they still very much control their destiny within the Lone Star to try to get to the conference championship within the Big 12. Now, as for the Big 10, we go to the Buckeye division, and a lot of teams still in it in the Buckeye division. Ohio State, we know what Ohio State is capable of. It is an elite program, but Kent State is making their presence felt as they get to a 2-0 start in conference play. And how about Akron as well? Akron came in here, they beat Michigan, so Akron can certainly make some noise. Alongside Cincinnati and Toledo, this was the only division that had a conference championship representative that didn't reach that 6-win threshold over the course of the entire regular season, so some wonky things can certainly happen for sure. Now, as for the Hoosier division, because of that loss for Michigan against Akron, Miami of Ohio is currently on top right now. They have a 2-0 conference record for the time being and on the verge of bowl eligibility. That'll be a great milestone for that program. Michigan is still in the thick of things even with the loss, but they have Michigan State, and Michigan State is also in the thick of things as well. With that loss for the Wolverines, suddenly the Hoosier division becomes a lot more interesting. Now, as for Conference USA, we go to the Colonial Division now, as Navy is currently on top, but Maryland is right on their heels, putting together a solid season behind the scenes. They are at 4-2 with that 2-0 conference record. Rutgers is right in there as well with a 4-2 record and 1-1 in conference play. James Madison was a top 25 team. They were knocked out because of that loss to Syracuse, but that was their first loss of the season so far. So if James Madison can continue to level the play that they've been playing, I expect them to see them back in the top 25, but should be an interesting race to say the least to get to that Conference USA championship. Now, as for the Union, again, a very open race right now. That seems like the whole conference is cannibalizing itself in the early going, but Boston College currently has the lead right now. They're 2-0 in conference play, and Boston College has been a solid team at 4-1 so far. Syracuse is in here in the thick of things alongside Penn State and Army, all whom are ranked in the top 25. So again, some really interesting action here in Conference USA. Things can certainly get spicy. Now, a quick look at the independents and the two independent teams that we do have, because I had to have two independents. Louisiana Monroe is 5-2, so they're on the verge of going to a bowl game once again. And then San Jose State is putting themselves in that conversation as well, going 4-3 here at the halfway mark of the regular season. Speaking of trying to make things interesting, oh boy, did things get interesting in the MAC conference. Right now, we got Mid-Tennessee State on top at the moment. We haven't seen them since, I believe, week number 1 against Miami, but Mid-Tennessee State has been doing some nice things in MAC play. They currently are on top of the division, and it helps that Tennessee also lost to, who did they just play? I think it was Illinois. They just lost to Illinois. Illinois could play some spoiler. Kentucky is having a good season as well. They're 5-1 overall, 2-1 in conference play. In Louisville, who has been a laughing stock, it seems like, in the NCAA this season. Well, they're only one game out as well, so if they can handle their business in the MAC conference, well, they could still get to bowl eligibility, even with this 1-5 start, surprisingly. Now, as for the Great Lakes division, because of Illinois' win against Tennessee, they move in a tie for first place. They are at 2-0 for the time being. West Virginia is right in there as well. West Virginia also doing its thing in a moment. They're 2-2 as well. Northern Illinois having a solid season. They are 4-2 with a solid record in conference play as well. They were bowl eligible last year, but did not make it in. Were not invited to a bowl game, unfortunately. So, free team race for the time being, it seems like, here in the Great Lakes division. But we go to the opposite side of the country where we check in on the Mountain West, and a lot of great football played out in the Mountain West. We got Arizona, who's 5-1. Arizona State is 5-1 as well, and then UNLV also 5-1. A lot of great football out here in the Mountain West, even though none of these teams are ranked, although I expect that to change at some point in the year. Colorado, the defending conference champions, well, they're going to have some work to do. Only 2-4 to this point. Already lost more games than they did all of last year, but they're certainly not out of it, though, in the Desert Division. As for the Mountain Division, Colorado State already is bowl eligible, kind of surpassing some expectations. If we're going to be honest here, did not expect Colorado State to be this good, but they are going to at least be bowl eligible. This is not as good of a division, though, as Utah is the next best team at 2-3, followed by Boise State at 2-4 with a 1-2 conference record. Not the better of the division, so Colorado State is certainly, they haven't clinched anything yet. Let's make it extremely clear, but they're in an extremely good spot right now. Now, this has arguably been the toughest conference in all of college football, and we might be seeing a case where this conference is kind of cannibalizing itself at the moment, but almost all of these teams are still in it. Washington State, they currently have the lead as of today at 5-2. A couple of other teams that are close to bowl eligibility are Cal, who's ranked in the top 10, Oregon, who's ranked in the top 20, and then got Nevada and Washington still in the thick of things as well, but we'll also have some work that needs to be done if they want to go bowling and if they want to compete for a conference championship as well. Now, in the Pacific, it's a little bit clear cut in terms of what's happening here right now. USC, number one team in the nation, no one is questioning them, but Hawaii has came out of nowhere, it seems like. 5-1, 2-0 conference record as well. Hawaii still has to play USC, but they're playing some very meaningful football in the second half. Did not expect that from them. Meanwhile, UCLA just lost against Cal recently, but they're still in it. They got to take care of business against USC and Hawaii if they want to take care of things and go back and compete for a conference championship like they did last year. So only two more conferences left to cover, and we now go to the SEC. Georgia has been one of the best teams in the country so far. Almost all of their games have been in conference play. They've played 5 of their 6 games in conference play right now. They are undefeated. It looks like it's their conference to run away with, though, as the next best team looks like it's Georgia Tech, who's 1-0, but I mean, that's their only win in the entire season. Coastal Carolina has not been much better at 1-1, happened to lose to Georgia, so they're going to need some help as well if they want to go and try to get to this conference championship somehow. Georgia's going to have to fold in the second half. Now, as for the Sunshine, as of right now, Miami has the advantage with that 3-1 conference record. They have the tiebreaker over Florida, as those two teams did play against each other earlier this season. Florida Atlantic, however, we have not seen Florida Atlantic play either Miami or Florida, to my understanding, so they could certainly still mix things up as well, but FAU, they are still very early in their conference play right now. Looks like it's probably going to go between Miami and Florida to represent the Sunshine Division within the SEC. And finally, we have the Sun Belt, and the Sun Belt has been pretty fun to watch, to be honest with you. A lot of good football happening in the Sun Belt as well. How about Louisiana Tech coming out of nowhere, starting the season unranked, and Louisiana Tech is 6-1. We did not see this coming, and Louisiana Tech can keep this up. Not only could they be going to a conference championship, but they could mess around and go to a college football playoff as well, which would be a massive accomplishment for that program. Arkansas also ranked in the top 10 as well. They are 4-1 in conference play, having a very good record at 6-1 as well. Now, as for the Dixie Division looks like it could turn into a 2-team race at the moment. Ole Miss is at the top. They are defending conference champions at 4-1. They are looking to get back to that mark once again. They are being chased, however, by the Alabama Crimson Tide. Now, Alabama did lose to Ole Miss, so if they finish with the same record, Ole Miss would be going, but Alabama continuing to put that pressure on Ole Miss, so that Ole Miss has to remain perfect if they want to remain at the top in the conference standings for the time being. Auburn could also do some interesting things, but don't really know what you're going to get from Auburn. We've seen them play their high marks, and then we also seen them play some head-scratchingly bad games as well, so don't know what you're going to get from Auburn. And then Southern Miss, we'll see what Southern Miss can do as well, but they're very early in their conference season as well, as they're trying to get to a point where they can be bowl eligible here in season number 2. So that'll wrap things up here for week number 7 of the NCSL, and I hope you enjoyed this halfway mark update. If you did, make sure you go ahead, smack that like button for me, as it does get it out to more college football fans like yourself. And then also hit that subscribe button as well. I would truly appreciate it. But that being said, this is John J. Gaming on the mic signing off. But I'm hoping you guys are all out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.